Hi there, I'm Trevor Coote, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we are joined by Greg Stewart. Greg owns and operates Parametals Contracting as a motivational speaker and a personal empowerment coach. This episode highlights the intersection and commonalities of business and sport. When Greg is not focusing on his business, he is training as a Paralympic shot put athlete. At the time of publishing, Greg is preparing to leave for the 2024 Paralympics in Paris in just a couple of weeks. This is following a gold medal performance at the 2020 Paralympics in Tokyo. I hope you enjoy this episode. Greg Stewart, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Trevor, I'm so pumped to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I am really looking forward to, I feel like I say this every time when I open the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but I really am. The story, the journey that you're going to bring from the business aspect is one thing in this conversation. But as people will hear, there's another big aspect that you and I feel like are very connected, the business and the sport element. And you've got a successful and enduring sport career. And I think that this is going to be a really fascinating conversation about tying those two elements together and the challenges that come with both, being in business and excelling in sport and truly excelling. We'll get into that. First, as I always do, I want to know what your introduction to business was, your entrepreneurial journey. Was it early in your life, being influenced by other people? Was it something that was happenstance? How did you find yourself entering the world of business?
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Trevor. When did I really get kind of introduced into, I'd say, going into business? Would have been during COVID, actually, January of 2020. Prior to that, I was what most people were, an employee of some form of a small business, a larger business, a corporation, whatnot. And one thing I always found is when I was working corporate, typically you're just seen as a number. How many times do people working corporately relay or parallel ourselves to a number, a working number, just here to generate numbers for the company and actually kind of remove the human part of it. And so I actually got let go of my job it was October of 2019. I was working for a large heavy equipment company selling machines. And I got let go. They did a massive let go company-wide. I think they did something like 2,400 people over that span or something like that. And then lo and behold, 4 months later, we went into COVID.
Right.
And so nobody was working. Or the people that were working from home.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like sitting around twiddling my thumbs, or thumb, I guess you could say. And I was just like,
We'll
I need to start doing something. Yeah. I need to do something. And one of my friends has worked in the automotive recycling industry for like 10 years, 11 years. And specifically, and I always get a hoot when I share with what I do, but I worked in the catalytic converter industry. So the recycling of catalytic converters. And usually when I bring up that word, everyone's like, oh, those things that people steal from underneath cars.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Except I'm way too big to crawl under a car. So, I stayed away from that part. But, I put a lot of my focus on working with, organized companies, companies that have a name, people that are just have structural integrity within their business and all that kind of stuff. Anyways. So yeah, January 2020 is when I stepped into kind of starting my own business. And it was just me, no employees, nothing like that. And the goal was just to help cover my costs, because I was also, and this is the part that we're sharing about, I'm also a Paralympic shot putter.
Yeah.
And this was my job to help pay my bills so that I can also train, so that I could also have something else that could preoccupy my time while earning a living, but will also balance the other half of my life. And that's kind of what got me started. And I really enjoyed it. You know, I'm saying I really enjoyed it because I'm not currently doing it, because I'm also training for the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games.
Yeah.
But it was January of 2020 when I started doing it, and then I actually competed at the Tokyo COVID Paralympic Games, and I know you and I know this, but that's where I became Paralympic champion and whatnot. But I will guarantee you, and the truth is that had I not had that job, had not started going into business, I wouldn't have been able to perform, because if I didn't have the money coming in, saved up, and been able to take off that month to 2 months leading up to the games, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
So I want to unpack a few things that you were talking about, but before we go there, I want to kind of give an image to the listener of who Greg Stewart is, because you kind of alluded to a couple of things, twiddling one thumb rather than two, not being able to fit under a car to steal a catalytic converter. And I think I think just the fact that you identified, the Paralympic Games, it gives some indication on who you are physically. You and I met by happenstance, though we kind of knew similar people. When I moved to Kamloops, British Columbia, you and I met in a coffee shop just by happenstance, and two larger people, there's kind of this gravitation. there's this kind of reciprocation of okay, I get what you're doing, I get what you put in to achieve what you're doing, and so that was at a coffee shop, and we just got chatting, and you talk a lot about this, that physical presence, but you're six. How tall are you?
7'2" and
7'2",
pounds.
Yeah, 7'2", 370, and one full arm, a thumb on one arm to twiddle.
Yeah, so I'm so 7'2", 370, and I'm what's considered a congenital amputee. So I'm actually missing my left arm just below the elbow. So as you can see, my left arm versus my right. So I could show you just how big I am. You know what? Let's do that, just because I do it all the time.
It's an audio
is how
only.
Tall I am. Oh, fair enough. There you go. Never mind. You can't see it, so it's all good.
Walking to the door
yeah,
frame.
I have to duck through every doorway.
The door frame goes to about your mouth, I guess. Hey,
so I have to duck under every doorway. It's actually funny we have this conversation. My biggest disability is my height. It is not my arm.
Yeah.
Because a disability is something that affects you on a daily basis. My height affects me far more often than my arm does.
Yeah. I remember you sharing that with, and even the perception. I think you've mentioned like young kids, when they see you, it's not about your arm, it's about your height. That's kind of what people see first.
Totally. It is a little more interesting with kids. I'd say they notice my arm actually more often, because with kids, all adults are big to them.
Right. Okay.
Right? We're all like, whether you're a young adult or you're all going to seem bigger. So the kids notice it. However, the older you get, so the older groups that you hang out with, they don't see it nearly as often, because they're infatuated by the height.
Yeah.
I've had numerous conversations where I'm chatting with somebody, and like 2 minutes, 3 minutes in, they're like, "Oh, shoot, I didn't even realize you have one arm."
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've set the table for creating an image for the listener, and anybody that's um, following wants to learn more, to follow your journey, because you are going into. I'm going to make sure this episode comes out before the 2024 Paralympics. So people can watch your journey as you go into your competition in shot put. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more, Greg. I want to lean into kind of the parallels that you see between business and sport. There's some aspects that I want to specifically ask you about. One is loneliness. There's kind of a loneliness element in business, certainly, which is one of the premises behind the podcast. But before we go there, I want to unpack something that you said early on, and that's around starting your business journey in January 2020, not just to fund your athletic pursuits, but you said it was to kind of fill in the other time, to complement all the efforts that you're putting into training. Tell me a little bit more about that, about needing something else that kind of separates the training from the rest of your life.
I think one thing that we all get caught up in is an idea called attachment. We get so attached to the identity of, right? So if we are a business owner and we are, we're selling shoes, right? Oftentimes we will attach ourselves as the shoe seller. But when we go home, if we're still attached to that and we're not in a place where we can separate it, that's what we stick to. And what I found really helpful for me was when I was throwing, I got to pursue excellence in it, understand it, learn about it. But when I got home, I felt like I couldn't turn it off. And it's that off time that actually means even more.
Right.
Because if we're not able to turn it off, it engulfs us. We feel like when we get back to work, we actually haven't had time off because it's taken that time at home. And so we get to these points where, and I'm sure we've all experienced it, where we're experiencing a sense of burnout, or in this case, talking about loneliness. I'm the only one experiencing this. Why can't I get a break? Why is everything always happening? And it's because on that time off, we don't have anything to separate ourselves. And so for me, shot takes a lot. I'm training 3 to 4 hours a day. That other half a day, I got to do something other than just rest. And I just found that, I started working with companies and just kind of creating that separation, but also training my brain to learn more and not just so fixated on work, or training or whatnot. And it's helpful because then it starts to change your identity. And it starts to teach you how to grow. Because that's the other part that I think we just get so tied up in what's going on around us that we don't get the opportunity to stop, take a deep breath, look around, see what's going on, and then move through stuff, understand stuff. I don't really want to go in this direction with this, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. I have this conversation all the time. How many people, after running a business, working for 30, 35 years, and when they retire or leave, get sick?
Right.
After retirement. This is, I know it might be a weird segue, but I feel strongly that we get sick because, one, we have more time on our hands, but all the stress, all the things that we endure in business, in working and everything like that, when we're working, we're bringing it home, we're working, we're bringing it home. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to rest because we are always going. And our identity is now attached to that, right? Selling, I'm Greg, the shoe salesman. but I'm at home, I'm Greg the shoe salesman. And if I'm unable to separate the two of those, I now have that attachment. And when that attachment leaves, you got a big void that you got to fill.
Right.
Sorry, this is totally off topic, but it gets me going every time I talk about this. But it's so important that we give that time to rest. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about it. You can edit this out later because I was just like, man, this gets me.
No. That's good. My question is, do you see that going like keeping the focus on you and this connection of business and sport, your balance of, your business ownership identity and your athlete identity? Can you say that it went the other way too, that that getting into the business gave you a different identity than being the shot putter? Like, was there a risk that you just attached too much of your identity to being a shot putter, and that's all you know and everybody knows about you?
100%. It's a pendulum, right?
Yeah.
It's just one way or the other. But, and like you're talking about, and why you have this podcast, is if we can start creating a more vulnerable experience and have these conversations, maybe it won't be as pendulum. It won't be identity, Greg the shot putter, Greg the business owner. It's Greg.
Right.
And these are things that I like to do. All right. But initially, it went to Greg the catalytic converter buyer.
Yeah.
And then that whole attachment of being like, oh, do I steal catalytic converters? No. But that's what the society views you as. And then you got to fight through and understand that and accept whatever, and then just continue working. Because that's one of the things in this industry, especially automotive recycling. It's always been viewed as a very shady industry. And you talk about automotive recycling, guarantee people are going to be like, I don't know. You mean the people that steal copper? Yeah, go ahead.
So then you add catalytic converters on top of it.
Totally. Well, where'd you get those from? This automotive recycling company. Well, where did they get them from?
Yeah.
That's not my business.
Yeah.
Right. But unpacking all of that and then recognizing that, hey, I don't need to prove to people that I don't steal. I just need to prove to myself that I can operate in a place of integrity and let the rest take care of itself. But that's a whole other thing we can get into.
No, let's explore that just for a second. Just we'll stay on the business piece, and then we'll transition kind of to that merger of sport and business. But in that environment, you start up. Did you know what you were getting into as you when you first explored the opportunity to go out and be a buyer and seller of catalytic converters? Did you know that that perception and that challenge was going to innately come with that role?
100%, because I felt that way towards it.
Right.
When I'm hearing when I'm recognizing that I'm buying catalytic converters, but all I hear on media is, oh, the price of catalytic converters is through the roof and people are stealing them left, right, and center. I'm now part of that. No questions. And for a while there was a part of me that was trying to do my best to prove to people that what I was doing was okay. When reality is that doesn't matter. They will always have their opinion. I can't change that. But what I can change is how I view it. So instead of trying to change it, I could accept the fact that people are viewing it this way and they have their opinion that way. And that if I acted in a place of integrity, so integrity to me would be ensuring that I'm buying from like legit places. If something doesn't feel right, to trust my gut and maybe step away or ask questions about it. And know that at the end of the day, when I'm done doing what I did, do I feel good? Because if I don't feel good, then, hey, what am I doing? Now I can self-reflect and say, hey, I don't like the way this felt at the end of the day. Do I need to go back and apologize? Do I need to go and have a conversation with somebody? Do I just need to do something to ensure that the business that I feel that I'm doing is right? And that's definitely where I have been the last little while now. It's just like, hey, I feel good at the end of the day because I trust in the work that I'm doing. And the opinion of other people does not matter nearly as much.
Maybe this is a good segue, maybe it's not, but does some of that apply to sport as well? Like, you know, a lot of people have sport experience. I don't know the percentage of the Canadian population that would have experience at the level that you have, being on an international stage, being a Paralympic champion, getting that gold medal hung around your neck with a, well, in your case, a virtual audience, but a global audience. What that perception that you're talking about, is there some of that you felt like you needed to kind of break through, and maybe even in the aspect of being a Paralympic athlete versus an Olympic athlete?
Ooh, we are going deep.
Well, I don't
yeah,
I don't want
it's
to put
funny.
you on
I
the
was
spot.
having
Like
no, I like this. This is what I like talking about this stuff. I think this is really important. I was having this conversation in my head today. And one of my biggest fears, or one of the things that scares me the most, is that I'm not good enough.
Right.
And where it presents itself the most is when I'm in a place of comparison, right? Comparing better than less than. And yes, do I wish that I got treated the same way that an Olympic athlete gets treated? 100%. Do I? No. Are we as a society changing that? Yes. Right? March of 2024. Okay, so just a little background. If you won an Olympic medal at the Tokyo Paralympic Games, you won a gold medal, Team Canada would pay their athletes $20,000. Okay, $20,000 for gold, $15,000 for silver, $10,000 for bronze. When I returned home from winning a Paralympic gold medal in Tokyo, I got a handshake from a friend. Fast forward to March 2024, we are now in a place where Canadian Paralympic Committee is now, they've reached out for sponsorships and whatnot, but we now match the same as Olympic athletes. So we are now in a place where if you win, you have a monetary value attached to it. We are in 2024. The Paralympics have been around since the 70s.
Right.
Canadian Olympic athletes started getting supported in the early 80s. So like we're finally getting, and this is just money wise, let alone sponsorships. I'm not a sponsored athlete. I even have a Paralympic gold medal and I'm not sponsored. Now, another little backtrack. I retired from sport after Tokyo. And it was only about 10 months ago that I chose to come back.
Right.
But we still don't have that recognition. And so, there's often times where I'm always comparing myself to an Olympic athlete and feeling ashamed or feeling not good enough or feeling embarrassed that I have a disability and that I'm not good enough, even though I'm already an Olympic champion in most people's eyes. Right? But that's when I'm not in, and going back to the initial question, that segue, I feel that way when I don't trust myself, when I'm not taking ownership of my actions, and when I'm not in a place of integrity. 100%. If I'm out of balance on one of those, I feel bad about myself.
Right.
And I will guarantee you it goes for every human being on earth. Whether you're an athlete, a business owner, office Bob, a mom, a dad, if you're not aligned with those three, you're going to be insecure about yourself. And that's, again, and I'm going to go back to the beginning, athletes and especially business owners have a duty to share how they are feeling and how their triumphs and success dictate their outcomes. And there's a real importance for the need to sharing. And for you to put on this podcast to encourage vulnerability and having an open, honest conversation only normalizes how we feel, creates a sense of belonging, and most importantly, allows us to feel like we're not the only one experiencing this. Because 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, the moment you experience something bad, you think you are the only one experiencing it. Yet there are millions and millions of people experience the exact same thing. Even though the scenario might be slightly different, you're still scared. You're still angry. You're still sad. Still feeling guilty. We all experience this. That's what keeps us human. But if we're able to normalize the experience by sharing it, incredible things happen and change your environment around you. Oh, I love this stuff, man. I can talk about this forever.
I know, and I see it. I mean, you are the definitely a leading voice in being able to talk about emotion, being able to talk about vulnerability, sharing and identifying the importance of that and the value of that beyond just kind of your own expression. It's really to create a more inclusive community and environment. So I want to explore a little bit more this idea of equity, something that has come up in conversations with previous guests on the business front. Now we're kind of exploring both business and sport. Something that's come up on the business front that is, I'm going to say, a theme with a lot of the guests is this idea of purpose before profit, or purpose above profit. So making sure that you understand what your why is, the reason you go to work every day, the reason you have this business and struggle to make it thrive beyond just the dollars. What is it? What is your bigger contribution? And if we take that comparison of that you kind of put out there on the financial aspect, the award for a gold at the Olympics versus a gold at the Paralympics, or lack of payment, the handshake that you got, is that from your mind just an equity component that makes you struggle and gives you kind of time for pause and self-reflection and kind of this worth a conversation that you have with yourself? Because, so I guess to frame the question, if Olympians didn't get any money, would you feel better about the fact where you're at as a Paralympian, or where you were at in 2020 in Tokyo?
It's a phenomenal question. I would say maybe during that time or shortly after the Tokyo Paralympics, I would have been like, yes. Like, it would have been better, if nobody made money. Because then it would feel more inclusive.
Right.
All right. But then some would also argue, like, is $20,000, is $10,000 a lot? Is it even worth it? Like, because so many athletes go into debt just to be an athlete. Right? Just like so many people go into debt to own a business.
Yep.
Right? Like the risk versus reward. But like the whole profit versus, sorry, well, how's your saying
purpose.
Go? Purpose.
Yeah.
Versus profit.
Purpose before profit. Yeah.
Like, yeah, hands down. I know we're in business to make money, but one of the things that I've heard the most is some of the most successful companies, the profit always comes last, right? Because if you can keep happy employees, if you can have good structure and integrity within your business and continue to build that, the rest will come, right? The old saying, you build it, they will come, right? The same thing applies to sport. I'm not just a Paralympic shot putter tomorrow, right? I'm not just Greg tomorrow. I have to put in the work in order to achieve good things. It doesn't just happen. And that's something, honestly, that I'm recognizing right now is, I know we've talked a lot about catalytic converters, but I'm also in the process right now of building a professional speaking business.
Yeah.
And I'm recognizing, I had this talk with my counselor the other day. Last year and the year before, I think I might have given, 5 or 6 talks. That's all together. May this year, I gave 25. Right. And it's just like, but I have to put in the work. I have to do the things. I need to create the purpose in order for me to make a profit.
Yeah.
And then going back to like the inclusiveness and whatnot, we are definitely getting there. But at the same time, it also actually creates a positive in the sense of motivation. Right? Because we can see that we're not being treated the same, it creates a little bit of this wanting for approval, which then lights the fire underneath us to prove to people that we are good enough and that we can achieve great things as one, or recognizing that, hey, I don't have to compare myself and that I can actually just go out and do what I want to do and have fun doing it and achieve great things. But as long as I'm following my purpose, the good things will happen. And like, I feel very firmly on that. Yes, do we want profit immediately? 100%. All of us do. Right? But it's whether or not you are, and I'm going to go back to my 3 words again, you can trust in the process. You can take ownership of your actions through it and align with your integrity during that purpose. The rest will take care of itself. The profit will be there.
Right.
But it also depends on, as a business, what is profit? Is profit monetary? Or is profit feeling good going home at the end of the day? Is profit seeing that your employees are happy every day? What is profit to you?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah, and I don't know that we can build that exact alignment or connection to the sport aspect, but looking at your motivations and what inspires you to keep pushing forward. I mean, as a Canadian, even as an Olympic athlete, like you said, like $20,000 is not all of a sudden going to pay all of the bills that it took 4 years of training and everything else, sacrifice and costs for an athlete to get to the Olympics. Like in either case, 20,000 or zero, that's not a saving grace for them.
Totally. My coach actually, my old coach, his wife used to say she used to compete for European country, Ukraine or even Russia. I'm trying to remember. But she's like, I don't understand why Canadian athletes compete because there's nothing in it for them.
Why is it, Greg?
I don't know. I don't want to get too political here, but
No. Sorry. Not the reason for there not being anything in it. Why do you compete?
Well, and that would have been the next part is I think Canadian athletes are just passionate people. I think Canadians have always been recognized as passionate people. I think that's why we get treated the way we do when we travel internationally. Like, there's a reason why people put Canadian flags on their backpacks, even if they're not Canadian.
Right.
Because I feel that people get the sense that we are going to treat you with respect. We're going to show a level of compassion towards you. And so why do we compete? Yeah, we're passionate about what we do. And I think we're in a place where, I don't know, there's probably a sense of us that are needing to prove to people that we are good enough. Like, and what I'm comparing is Canada versus the United States.
Yeah.
Right? If you're an American, there's more opportunity for sponsorship, all that kind of stuff. The amount of money that's poured into sports versus that of Canada are very, very two different things. But if we're able to learn about them and understand why we do it more, good things can happen. But yeah, I think, like, for me, I'm passionate. I like to compete, but I also like the way it physically feels, pushing my boundaries.
Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about kind of the time that you were running your own business. We kind of touched on, you know, the loneliness aspect, or the feeling that everything's on you in order to make your business successful. Draw some parallels for me between your experience as a Paralympic athlete and kind of that journey in general of dedication, of commitment, of perseverance, and then starting your business in January 2020, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing where it was going to end up, and kind of the mentality. Is there a parallel in that mentality that you had to have going into business, and kind of that perseverance that you knew was going to be in front of you?
So one thing, if we were to compare sports and business, is that, well, you can use this for anything. We don't know what tomorrow is going to look like.
Right.
We never will. But we can put plans in place that can help us feel like we have an idea of what's going to happen tomorrow. We can trust that the work that I'm putting into today will affect and make tomorrow a good day. All of this that I'm saying is business and sport related. One thing that I think gets overlooked and needs to be discussed more is that even on the most challenging days, that you did a good enough job. I think oftentimes we'll have a bad practice or have a hard time running, dealing with a customer, and like, oh man, I got to go deal with them again tomorrow. Oh, I got to show up tomorrow and train again. The night before, if our dialogue is shit, I don't want to do this again, that's what our morning is going to start. But if our evening before is, hey, I did a good enough job today, even though it was really challenging, that's typically how you're going to start your morning. Okay, I know it's going to be a challenging day, but I did a good job. And I think that's a really, really important thing that we often overlook. And that's the whole, in my mind, the body-mind connection. If we are mentally thinking about what is going to go on tomorrow and not how today is going, we're going to feel it tomorrow. And so, constant, self-talk, positive self-talk, can drastically impact the following day. So I'll give you an example. I'm on a pretty heavy program in training right now. I went to bed on Monday night after a really heavy lift, thinking, man, I'm exhausted. I'm going to be tired tomorrow.
Right.
Well, how did I wake up?
Yeah,
I was tired because I'm
Yeah.
telling myself I'm tired. Last night, I got a bunch of, I got massage work. I had a decent I had a terrible practice. Sorry. But when I went to bed, I was like, hey, I'm going to be tired tomorrow, but let's have a good day.
Yeah.
Right? And today it's been a good day, even though I was tired. I remember the days where I would be, my job made me travel a lot. So I'm based in Kamloops, BC, and I'd go as far as like Prince Rupert, right? 14-hour drive. And I remember a couple days where I'm like, I don't want to go into work because I know how this industry is viewed. Right? And the times where I'm like, I'm a catalytic converter buyer. 100%. The mornings are tough to get out of bed because I knew I'm a catalytic converter buyer. Versus the nights that I would be like, I'm excited to see my customer.
Yeah.
And then the morning is I go and see my customer and I continue to build that relationship. I'm not a cat buyer. I'm a friend to this person. I'm building my rapport. We're creating a connection. And I'm also helping service them in a way that allows them to better themselves. Right? So self-talk in sport is the same in business. And I know we're talking like owning your own business, but the same thing will apply to your employees.
Yeah.
Right? Encouraging them self-talk. It's only going to show up the next day. Right?
Yeah.
I like one of the things I'm not a very religious person, but when I go to bed sometimes and I'm having a challenging day, I'll do this like 5 and 5 things I'm grateful for, 5 things that I can acknowledge myself. And I'll just like, it's ways to just kind of bring me back to ground zero instead of focusing on what was going on. And it just brings in that positivity. Plus, I will literally say like, I know I said I'm not very religious, but I will just be like, Dear Lord, Universal Spirit, whatever, please allow me to get some rest and relaxation right now. And then I go to bed and I usually have a pretty good sleep. But that's what self-talk is. And whether you're a business owner or an athlete or an employee, the way you treat yourself will dictate what your day looks like. And it's paramount in athletics. And I know it's paramount in owning the business. And I know when like I said, going back when I started working in the catalytic converter industry, when I said to myself, I'm a cat buyer, my expressions, the way I viewed my business weren't the best days versus the days where I'm like, hey, I'm Greg Stewart. I own Parametals Contracting and I'm going out to service and support my customers.
Yeah.
Always had better days.
Purpose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Figure out what that drive is. There are a few things there that, definitely parallel the conversations that I've had with other guests. That relationship piece for sure, building those relationships and understanding the importance of those. And then, this idea that, the self-talk tomorrow's a new day, being positive about what the next day is going to look like, but also your reflection on kind of the impacts that you had today. It was I did the best I could, and kind of that affirmation that you kind of in the self-talk. And that made me think of or wonder, in business, we have to put trust or faith in other people, especially if you have a large company. You have to say, okay, that's your department. You're going to run that. I trust you to be able to make the decisions that are necessary. Where does that cross over between like in sport, and especially again at the elite level that you compete at? Where does that trust start to get put in other people? Because even in an individual sport, it's a team environment. And I experienced that in my own athletics. I competed both in team sports and individual. And in both cases, there's a lot of accountability, but you also are surrounded by a lot of people. Where does that sit for you, that trust?
I think trust presents itself the most or the strongest when you trust yourself.
Fair. I like it.
I've always had this like, I trust in you. Okay, fair enough. But if you don't trust yourself, what are you actually trusting in those people? And so my example is, you hear it all the time. I'm going to love that person. I love them. They're incredible, everything like that. But then you look at that person and it's like, you're not really doing anything that shows love towards yourself. So my example is, I can't do it right here, but like if I had an apple in my hand and you were sitting across from me, I'd be like, here, Trevor, take this apple. Perfect. You took it. That's because I possessed that apple. It was mine. Now, if I were to do the same thing, but not hold that apple and say, Trevor, take this apple. Well, you can't take it because I don't possess it. So what am I giving you? Right? So the same thing applies to trust. If I'm not doing things that create trust. So for example, if I have a workout that I have to do 3 sets of 6 reps and I'm only doing 2 sets of 5 regularly, am I building trust within myself? I've been asked to do this. I'm not doing it. Am I in a place of trust? But on top of that, what am I saying to myself, or how am I acting that's making me create those 2 sets of 5? Because if it's just like, I'm physically tired, you can trust in the fact that you're physically tired. But if it's, I just don't want to do it, or I'm too busy thinking of other things, or there's too much going on in my life that I just can't make that happen, then the way you view trust on yourself will be different on how you trust other people. So I've said, hey, I'm giving you a report. I would like it done. I trust that you can get it done. If you're not that example, probably guarantee you that report wouldn't get done.
Right.
But if you're building it, but on top of it, and this is the catch to it. My views on trust is that no matter what the outcome is, I'm going to be okay. But that's like a personal trust. So if I give you that report and you don't do it, I'm still going to be okay. Even if I got to go back to these people and say, hey, sorry, the report wasn't done, I can still trust that in the end, I'm going to be okay. And that at the end of the day, even though it didn't get done, I'm still good enough. The people that I asked to do it are still good enough. We're just going to have a conversation tomorrow to figure out why it didn't get done.
Yeah.
But that goes for anything, whether it's trust or ownership or love or happiness or, any of that. They're like treat others the way you want to be treated concept, right? So, but trusting other people, especially in an individual sport, can be challenging to some, but really easy to others. And for me, I think it's easier in a way, because I know that I'll be okay, whether it does or doesn't happen.
I think the good enough comment is a strong one too, right? Like to always be able to reflect back that, some things are out of your control. Some things are within your control, but based on that element of trust or counting on the people around you. And if something, we're a world that is exceptionally imperfect, striving for perfection, always, right?
Yeah, when are people going to figure out that you're never going to be perfect?
Yeah.
You know why? Because you already are perfect. Why are you striving for something you already are? And there's a catch there, and I don't think people can really understand that. But it's like, you got to where you are in your life based on the experiences, the understanding, the emotional intelligence that you have that got you there. And I can't tell you to do it any better because I'm in the same place for the exact same reason. So in a realistic way, we already are perfect because we don't know how to do it any other way. And my right and wrong is based on your judgment. So I can't technically do it wrong per se, because I only know this because that's how I know my environment. It's a little tricky to explain, but I hope you kind of understand.
But there's got to be an acceptance from the other side, right?
Totally.
Like your demonstration of right and wrong and your capacity and ability to deliver on whatever it is. There has to be an acceptance from my side to understand that that's what we're, you're offering me what you have to offer and nothing more and nothing less. Right.
And it also comes down to it's like to me, the best customers I've ever worked with are the customers that want to make money. And what I found with that is those customers that have been like, here, I'm here to make money. That means that you also have to make money in order for me to make money. They are the easiest and best customers to work with because they understand that it takes money to make money. Whereas the customers that are nickel and diming you all the time, they're not going to be your customer for very long.
Yeah.
Because you're not making money. They're trying to take all the money and you don't want to deal with them.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to what you're saying, you got to align. You got to make sure that the people that you're talking with align with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If not, you won't deal with them. And
I think, going back before we totally stomp on purpose before profit, there's always a profit component. There's always that motivation for money.
Yeah. And I get money runs the world. Like I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But I also trust in the fact that if I can be me, I will generate and create money.
Yeah.
But my focus isn't generating and creating money. It's creating a purpose, following in my... I get so caught up in this because money runs us. But in a way, we should be putting happiness before it. It should all, in my eyes, it should be happiness, love, then money.
We're in a world where all of that is challenging, right?
Totally.
We don't need to unpack that here, but
no, but it's just because we are always telling ourselves money brings happiness.
Yeah.
Right. But imagine, and again, going back to purpose, imagine really, really recognizing your purpose, what you bring to the table, how you can support your business. Imagine that's all your focus. So guarantee you the profit would be there.
Yeah.
Because one, you don't care about the profit. You care about the purpose of it and enjoying it.
Yeah.
Easy.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful world?
Oh, so wonderful. I feel like I get off topic a lot. I'm sorry, but I get so passionate about this sometimes, and I'm just like, I'm kind of just spewing. So my apologies.
That's the beauty of this podcast is that it's a conversation, it's a journey, and everybody has a different, as much as the stories are similar, everybody's story is different enough that there's different lessons, different experiences, and hopefully a different experience for the listener. And certainly yours was, Greg. I think, that connection that we talked about off the front end of the podcast, connecting the business, the aspects of business to your experiences in being an elite athlete, standing on the top of the podium at the Paralympic Games, there's a lot of connection there, and there's a lot of aspects mentally, physically, emotionally that connect those two worlds. All the best of luck and everything else that you need in your little bag of tricks as you go and make Canada proud in Paris in a few weeks. We'll be rooting for you, and I truly appreciate you putting all of that time, effort, dedication into representing Canada on an international stage. It's truly wonderful.
Thank you. And can I just add one last thing?
Yeah.
We haven't
that was a really phenomenal closing.
It was.
Go
thank you.
Go
and
ahead.
That's why me just sitting here saying thank you is perfect. But one thing, like, I'm sure people are going to get the gist that Greg definitely has a more holistic approach to business and training and competing. But I think there's a big important thing that isn't discussed that needs to be discussed, and that it's okay to express your feelings.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is extremely important because it is what creates success. And why I'm saying that, athletes and business owners share something in common, and that is that they are constantly putting themselves in a state of vulnerability, of failure. We are always pushing ourselves to fail, whether it's physically or emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever. We are always trying to better the business. You know, I'm not just a catalytic converter buyer. I am a business out to supply recycling within, the world. I'm not just a shot putter, or I'm a shot putter with the goal of trying to push things. But when things are challenging, when we can find or have a safe space, express those feelings. You do not need to be doing this by yourself. If you are sad, cry. If you are angry, yell. If you're feeling guilty, apologize. These are all normal human experiences. And if you are able to express them and be vulnerable with them, you're only going to make things stronger. You're only going to show to people who you really are, and it guaranteed will gravitate the people that you want around you closer to you and make things just that much easier. Guaranteed. But thank you, Trevor. I really appreciate having me on this. I absolutely love this. I think what you're doing is perfect. I think people in the business realm, as well as just the everyday realm of life, need to recognize and normalize that we are all experiencing very similar experiences, even though the scenario might look different, but we all feel the same, we all express the same. And that I hope that, people that are listening can recognize that, hey, you're not in this alone. You are loved. We love you. And we only want the best for ourselves and others. So,
absolutely, man. You're a great advocate, a great spokesperson, and I always appreciate sharing time with you. So thank you so much, and all the very best, Greg. We love you.
Thank you very much, Trevor.